Good afternoon and welcome to Jack Dodsons Racing Insider News with Scott Allen. We got Joe Staples with us tonight, and I'm sorry that you have to be here with Scott. I know you have to deal with him at the arena racing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we also have Bill Mullis, the owner out at Langley Speedway. Man, we are glad to have you. It's a big deal to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you coming out. And I'm going to lead off the question with a big one.
Okay.
What is one of the things, as a owner of a racetrack, that you see as a big problem for you as far as car counts and dealing with the race car drivers and getting them to the racetrack?
The biggest problem really I see, and I talk about it a lot, I've been talking about it this week, is controlling the cost of the cars. And when you're running the racetrack, you can't really own the cars. You know, you can't say, well, I want a 20 car late model count and I've always got 18, so I'm going to buy 2 and field them. You can't do that. You know, you're going to mess your own show up because you can't be involved in the racing there. But that's the biggest thing I see. It's like the late models, you know, it costs so much. And, you know, I'm involved pretty heavily with NASCAR. You know, I'm on the appeals board and have done some really cool stuff there. But I don't know why anybody's waiting to try to control cost. And I mean, and you see in some of my support divisions, we'll buy 4 tires too and bank some, and then you can only buy 1 tire a year. So I'm eliminating a guy with a U car from having to race against a guy that can get 4 tires every time they run, you know, and just be on stickers all the time, because that really drives it up. So the absolute biggest probably scare I see, the biggest hurdle is seeing when we're going to control the cost of racing and try to make rules. Like particularly I go to late models because they're so expensive, and there's pretty low budget teams that are pretty successful, but there's high budget teams that spend a lot of money and they're pretty successful. So it's just a hard match there for the low budget guy to compete against that money. And sometimes it's not so much money in equipment, but it's money in time. Having a crew chief that costs you $1,000 a week hired for your late model effort. And you know, one of the things we should be doing now that we looked at is bump stops. You know, instead of, you know, we're coming off coil binding and there's been all the big spring car stuff and the coilover stuff. But when we looked at bump stops, and we hosted a seminar for late model tech in Hampton, Virginia this spring, and for NASCAR for all the tracks, and we had a lot of tracks participate, South Boston and Motor Mile and Hickory, and a lot of tracks were there. And Kenny Hunley, who took Lynn Carroll's job in NASCAR in the late model program, he was there. And, you know, we're looking at bump stops, how adjustable they are, how easy they are to use, and that it could end all this big spending that's gone into geometry in the front and spring stuff. So, you know, I'm just wondering, why are we going to wait? You know, what are we waiting for to try to make some move to try to make it a little less expensive, you know, at least tier 1. And then the other divisions, you've just got to get a rule book and stick by it. And not, you know, rules tend to kind of migrate over years. You've got to get a rule book and just stop it right where it is and say, this is the rules. We're not changing it. That way, if you stop racing, your old car is still good for him. He doesn't have to buy anything. So that's the biggest thing I think we're up against, is actually the cost that the racers are incurring. And you invest in a track and you hope that the race community can continue to afford racing. And it's scary because without racers, you don't have a show. And if you don't have a show, you don't need fans and you don't need track sponsors. So it really goes down, you know, the racers are always number one, and unless you figure out a way to preserve them as a group and keep them there economically viable and sound, you're going to have a problem. So that's what scares me. And, you know, sometimes I wonder, you know, about some of the built engines are pretty expensive. And, you know, who is it we're keeping in business? You know, a crate motor, they got some good crate programs, but now they go in them and spend $8,000 or $9,000 after they get the crate engine. And I love the engine builders, but if we don't change how we're doing business, the engine builders aren't going to be there either. As we lose car count, the tracks are going to suffer, and it's going to hurt everybody that's in that type of racing economy. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is how are we going to cap spending for the race community so they can actually do it. And, you know, I thought, unless you're really got a major plan, most of the racers I see are hobbyists. even late model racers, the really good ones, they're kind of a hobbyist racer. They might want to take a back crack at the big time, but how they really going to get in an Infinity ride, or how they going to go to Cup? And I thought hobbies were supposed to be fun. So when they get costing too much money, it concerns me that, hey, is it fun or is it really getting to be stressful for the people?
But when you look at the late model division, and I know you got other things that you're dealing with, but I'm looking at the late model. I paid attention to this weekend. You had a good car count in your late model division at
Right.
Langley this weekend. But then I look at South Boston did not have a good car count. I do not know what Southside had. I don't know if you heard of how many they had.
I want to say it was about 12, 13 cars.
So you seem to be able to pull that. How well do you work with the other racetracks in trying to get a uniform thing as far as the late models are concerned?
Well, we're uniform. Motor Mile, South Boston, us, Kenley, they've gone to limited lates, and so is East Carolina. But we're uniform. We are by the NASCAR book in late models, so there's no discrepancy from one track to another. You can leave Motor Mile and come straight to Langley, or leave there and go to Sobo. And there's probably 8 or 9 tracks. I'm sure Hickory and places down through Carolina are on the NASCAR rule book. But it's still kind of a small community. I mean, if you look at all of us tracks that are NASCAR sanctioned that are on the NASCAR rule book for late models, I don't think there's about 10 or 11 of us. I haven't done a head count this spring, but there's not been a lot of tracks, so we're kind of preserving that last chip of it. So, I mean, one of my ideas is probably go to NASCAR and tell them, hey, you guys need to take a hard look at this thing, and what are we going to do? So, this weekend, George Silverman, he's vice president of NASCAR. He'll be at Langley Speedway with the Tour Series. So I'm going to talk to George and say, hey, I want to call Richard Buck and I want to call Kenny, and let's talk about this and be real about it before it's too late. So I want to be kind of proactive and get a little bit of a head against, kind of hedging against what could happen. And that's, I think, the very thing you see is a car count. If it's Dwayne, where'd it go? When I got in this 6 years ago, South Boston was a king.
Mm-hmm.
And Kathy Rice has been very good to me. She's probably helped me more than any other track operator. And of course, Clay Campbell's been good to me out of Martinsville because we do that Virginia Triple Crown. But Kathy's one of the first people I ever went to in racing and said, hey, I just got Langley, I need help. And she's had open arms and been really good to me. So it's kind of a problem we share in the race community as track operators. It's not just isolated to me. And a few years ago, 6 years ago, I felt like Langley's car count was failing, and it got really scary.
Mm-hmm.
When you get down to 12, 13 cars in one of your top tier divisions, you start thinking real hard, and you're thinking, I've got this track now, what am I going to do with it if I don't have a show? So it is, it's a deep concern, and I'm just going to try to get some people together. But yeah, we work together, the tracks work together real close. And one thing I want to do is call Kathy and a couple others and say, hey, what are we going to do with this? Kenley had pretty good late model count, but Mike Diaz and the boys have gone to limiteds. And, I don't know how the car count's been yet. I think they're just starting. They had that car series. And
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask you that. How is that affecting it? The car series, it's a traveling series that a lot of the late model guys are following. I know a lot of the guys around the Charlotte area are really big into it.
really big in it, yeah.
So
Well, I think it's going to have some effect. Take Langley, for instance. Matt Waltz now is in the car series in the Randy Sears car. So that's a big effect on our show, is not having Waltz, one of the guys that emerged as a superstar the last few years.
Right.
And he's always right up there on point. And, y'all know he nearly won Martinsville. I feel like that was somewhat stolen from him. And he nearly won the Hamlin race last year in South Boston. He led 195 laps of it. And I was so proud. I'm in there, and Renee Hackett and Darren from Caraway were there, and a lot of track owners. And Renee Hackett looks at me, and we've got all these people in the box up there at South Boston, and she says, Bill Mullis, isn't that one of your cars? I said, yeah, that's one of my boys from Langley, but I said, matter of fact, that's his backup car, which it was, and he was leading the race in it. So she's like, wow, I don't want your guys to come to Caraway. But it does. So the car series has pulled one of our stars from Langley, but you really can't expect the boys to stop at your level when they're that good either. I think Jack McNally, who I know pretty good, I hosted a Pro Cup race when they first got involved in it, and it was a larger group then. And Jack McNally's a really good guy, and he's been wrestling with that series. It was a Hooters Pro Cup when they took it over. And they tried to migrate it and hold on to what was there, but it just wasn't strong enough. They just couldn't keep it. And he's had engine ideas and this idea and that. But I think the smartest idea was doing the late models and super late models. He's got a lot of cars right under his nose that they don't have to do anything to. He just had to dream up the series. So a whole lot of time in racing, I think what we're looking for is right in front of us, and we look past it because we're on such a search, we're not even seeing. So I think that's what happened to Jack McNally. He sat down there and he had that series, and he figured, what do I do to have a real series with a good car count? And when he looked at late models, they're right in front of him. It was a great idea. So
Yeah, we had him on the show about 2 weeks ago, and he was telling us that he had to make that decision to do this.
Right.
And so far, he says it's worked out good for him because, I mean, it's right there in front of him. He's got everything handed to him as far as the guys coming and racing.
Right.
So
I give him credit for hanging on, because there was a pretty big owner group, 4 or 5 of them, when they took over the Hooters series, and everybody kept dropping out, and Jack took it on by himself, and he kept it going. So I give him a lot of credit for his perseverance, and I'm hoping his series works, and hoping to bring him to Langley Speedway with it. So we've already talked to him.
well, good.
Yeah.
That'd be
That'd be
good.
great.
Yeah, I would like to
I'm
see
sure
that
a lot
too.
of you guys would want to probably run that race too.
Absolutely, yeah. So it could be a huge car count, with our guys that maybe don't run the series all the time.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the Hampton Heat. You brung that to Langley Speedway, and that's been a huge success. I know last year, I mean, y'all were asking us to take our cars out of the parking lot and bring them into pits. You had so many
Yeah.
people, and people were parked down at the 7-Eleven. I don't know if I've ever, in my years of been in and out of Langley Speedway the last 20 years, ever seen it so packed.
I really think that Hampton Heat last year, and I'm not saying it as bragging rights,
How many cars?
I think we had 38.
And started all of them, right?
Yep, started everybody, and a couple of them dropped out, lost the engine during the day or something in practice. But I honestly believe it was the best show, even though it was in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
I
a-
didn't want to mention that. But it was the best show that's ever been at Langley in 64 years. And what amazed us is the fans were there. Kathy
Yeah.
Rice was there from South Boston, and Mike Diaz from Southern National was there with us. And Mike kept saying, your people aren't leaving. And I told him, Mike, they love racing. They're not going anywhere. They came here to watch a race. So that kind of amazed me. But I'm never going to start a champ kart race again. And what was it like?
1:30, I think it was.
2:45 or something? It was insane.
Oh yeah. Oh, I thought it was the first time I sat on the. I was sitting on the back.
You didn't have to worry about it.
Your champ kart racers don't do good at 3
Yeah,
a.m.
you don't have to worry
Don't
about
be
that.
that good anyway, for the most part. But.
You gotta look at who's in the field there to work that out. Now you got a lot of stuff going on this year. Give us a little heads up on what all the different races and stuff you got going on this year. I know you got the Hampton Heat back, and
Well, I got the tour race this coming weekend. That Southern Modified Tour race is really hot stuff. And that was the first thing I ever asked of NASCAR. The first time I ever went to Concord to the R&D Center in the fall, I actually asked Philip Morris, who do I talk to? I didn't know a soul. And he said, that man right there. Well, he pointed out George Silverman, who happened to be the vice president down there and had some juice in Daytona. And I went right to him and said, Mr. Silverman, I'm Bill Mullis with Langley Speedway, and I'm in trouble. I said, can we talk? And basically we went in the back, and I told him, some of the struggles I was dealing with the Speedway. And he promised to give me some guidance, which he's done. We've had a very good business relationship. And I told him, I want a Southern Modified Tour race. That's when Madhouse was on, and it was big. And I told him, what have I got to do to get a tour race? He said, ask me. I said, I just did. So, I got that tour race that year. And then we actually talked about K&N after I had the first tour race, which is pretty expensive show to host for a short track, but it's very reasonable if you got good sponsors and a good track. And, we really... When I was first offered a K&N race from NASCAR, I declined it because I told George my bathrooms weren't ready. I had more track improvements, and then that winter we rebuilt the public restrooms, which turned out pretty nice. And after that, I called NASCAR back and I said, I'll take a K&N. So, I had the Southern Modified Tour race, and then K&N, and then got the second tour date, with the modifieds for the fall. And they said they were looking, and I said, well, good, I've got a place for you. So I'm kind of proud to kind of bring that back. And then the Hampton Heat, that's just huge. I didn't really start it myself. That had happened a year or so before I got the track.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a Hampton Heat in probably 07 and 08.
yeah,
And then I took over in 09. So, Hampton Heat is just something that was there in place, and we kind of built on it. And then, Clay and Kathy, not me, came up with this idea of Virginia Triple Crown, and Kathy called me and said, "Hey, you want to deal with us in Martinsville and going to Triple Crown?" I said, "It can't hurt us," and I was, kind of grateful for that offer from Kathy and Martinsville Speedway. So that's been a big deal for us, being part of the Triple Crown. I'm not sure it's built that many cars back and forth, but it built notoriety.
Yeah.
And it builds notoriety going to, to Martinsville in the fall when somebody else gets another 10 grand.
Right.
Because they scored in all 3 of those races. So a lot of things that I've tried to do at Langley were really to I felt like we had a great racetrack, but it was kind of like a sleep in the race community. And it was asleep again nationally. It didn't have a national footprint. So, some of our races were televised, starting with the Pro Cup race with McNelly and the boys
Right.
was one of the first. And we kind of kept working in that direction. And what I was trying to do is give Langley Speedway a footprint bigger than local, was my theory for some of the tour races. Some of this, like K&N races, can be televised on NBC Sports this year. And so will the second tour race will be on NBC Sports. So that's a big deal. And then this Fans Choice TV has really kind of put us out there, and some people are a little scared of Fans Choice, like people are going to sit home and watch. Local people don't want to sit home and watch. They want to be at the racetrack.
Right.
They want to be right there in the pits with their friends or right in the stands,
Right.
So I wasn't very scared of Fans Choice, and talked to people about the inception of that before it ever became Fans Choice, when they were just talking about it. And I used to race dirt bikes when I was a kid, and I was big in AMA flat track racing, which is part of Fans Choice. So when they said Fans Choice AMA, that's what I want to talk about. I said, let's talk about the motorcycle racing. Do you know who Kenny Roberts was?
Yeah.
So I got in on that, and I kind of asked everybody and told the right people, hey, when Fans Choice breaks, I want to be part of it at Langley. Tell me what I need to do. And I guess I was in a couple of key meetings and didn't realize I did pretty good. And I never knew I got it until they released a press release about Fans Choice TV. And I think Matt Waltz put it on Facebook. And I read it, and it said Evergreen Speedway in Washington and Langley Speedway. And I'm like, wow, really? And I read it about twice, and I thought, daggone, it worked.
So you had to be selected. It wasn't like you could say, hey, I want
No,
it.
somebody selected, and I'm not sure who. I talked to people in Daytona about it when they had the inception of it, and told them that I thought it was a great idea, and that as a short track, I would certainly like to be a part of that. But I think part of it that got it for us is they had seen some televised races from Langley already with the Tour Series. And I honestly believe with Mike Allen and Chuck Hall, I've got 2 of the best trackside announcers in the country.
Yeah.
And we've got professionally done commercials that are done at the radio station, and we've got some professionalism that when we go on TV, everybody can hear that. And when we go on Fans Choice, we've got a pretty tight package there. And I think that's what they realized. I think they really looked a little further than the surface and said, okay, what kind of show can he really produce? So they came there and put it in, and they put up 3 cameras. Y'all can see them, the little white cameras that are sitting there permanent. And then we asked, could we take Taylor Mayan and add his camera, which is panning the action. So with the 4th camera, it really turned it on. And,
Absolutely. I actually watched it this weekend, and it was so great to have that pan, because that's the one I ended up watching.
Yeah, so after we did that, and it's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of people in NASCAR have watched it, and a lot of Cup drivers watch it. I mean, Dale Jr. watches it, a lot of people watch it, and it's really good stuff. Dale Jr. tweeted something about Chuck Hall talking good about Tony Stewart and bad about Dale. so, I think Dale Jr. tweeted, I don't think the announcer at Langley Speedway likes me, he likes Tony Stewart or something. And I'm like, imagine
Hey, that's
that.
good. That's good publicity.
I told Dale he made a mistake of liking the Redskins too. So.
Oh, gosh.
So I think it's a combination of things that's kind of helped us there.
So what kind of things are you looking to? And one more thing I didn't even think about. You host the diversity program at the end of the year, and
Right.
that seems to be a big deal too. Because I've talked to a lot of the guys, a lot of the people that have gone through that program. Mm-hmm. We've had them on the show. We've talked to them. Or I talked to them at Charlotte, and they love Langley Speedway.
Yeah,
and
they do, and that's been a big opportunity. Of course, Jefferson Hodges. He was Mark McFarland's crew chief, and his dad was King Hodges, which is Sandy Lemon's brother. Mm-hmm. And when Dale Lemons passed away and they had the racetrack, Sandy fought with it for a while, but she actually brought King Hodges there to run it, and y'all remember that. And he was there a couple of years, and he passed away. They lost him tragically, and so Jefferson is his son, and that's the tie, to Jefferson Hodges. And Jefferson is really the crew chief or the operational chief for Reb Racing down in Concord. So we already knew each other, and I was interested in bringing it, not so much for the public, because I don't think the public realizes how big it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I was interested in hosting it, and Chuck Hall he's great at cutting deals. Y'all know that. You can't get anybody better to work for you in short track. I think I actually have the best promoter, marketer, and trackside announcer in short track racing in the country with Chuck. And we worked on it, and we put together a really good package. But the magic was the city involvement and Hampton University, because the city's back and supplied us other venues to do what they needed to do. Not all of it's at the racetrack.
Right.
A lot of it's classroom. They even do physicals with doctors. So, the university hosted a lot of that, and the city took care of us. We host a big dinner in the Air and Space Museum. That's a private dinner for Drive for Diversity when they come to town, thanks to the city of Hampton. And it was kind of magic. Really, Chuck worked on it. And he did such a good job, and he worked on it so hard, and got the right key elements involved that we submitted the application. And the next thing I know, he told me one day, he said, "We're going to have Drive for Diversity." I said, "That's unbelievable." So then, when you have all these kids come through there, they're from all over the country and Mexico, and it's fantastic. And even me sometimes, now that I've seen what the meaning of it and what really happens, and I'm kind of into diversity anyway in Hampton Roads Kart Club. We've been racing karts there 44 years, and I've been involved about 17, and I've got 17% female drivers right now in the kart club. So I've got some diversity, and I believe in it. I think it's the future of racing. So it kind of fit us, and they came there, and we did what we were supposed to do. They did what they were supposed to do, and it turned out that everybody was pretty happy. And Max Siegel, and he's the president of Rev Racing. He's a pretty amazing gentleman, and have got a relationship with him that's unbelievable. And then through the combine, being at the racetrack, we've had a lot of important people come to the racetrack. Bob Duvall came, and Bob's he's moved into marketing in NASCAR, but more recently, last year, Jim Cassidy. And Jim Cassidy's very important place in NASCAR today, and has got a family history, where his dad and the France family worked together. So it's been a big deal, and what I really see out of it is Bubba Wallace. I mean, Bubba Wallace got in the diversity program at Langley Speedway. Kyle Larson drove the first asphalt car at Langley. He had never been in an asphalt car until he got to Langley Speedway. And then, the girl drivers, McKenna Bell and this gal, Paige Decker, and now Natalie, Decker, they're out of Wisconsin. Their family is world-class snowmobile racers. Their dad was like the world champion snowmobile racer. So we've got snowmobile families that have crossed over into racing, and they're racing in the summertime out there. But that's what I see really cool about it. And then, we've done some sponsoring on some of the cars I have as Langley Speedway. I mean, one of the most embarrassing moments I probably ever had was I was in Daytona on the backstretch when they had the first battle at the beach. And CE's our track champion down there, so Falk is really getting the job done. And him and his dad, Wesley, got sick, and they worked on the car all day long in the pits, and they were really fast on that crazy short track and really tight corners.
I remember this.
CE was nailing it, and I had sponsored Kyle Larson's car. So I
didn't know that.
Go back to the video. So
That's funny.
So I'm down there, and I'm in the NASCAR skybox up top, and we're watching the race, and we have this pool going. And I had CE's number, and he's getting ready to win me all this money. So
This is funny.
This is funny.
Yeah, this is funny.
So Larson's dogging him, it's the last lap, and Larson basically knocks him sideways and then literally drives through him.
He did.
And somebody's looking at me like, you sponsored one guy and the other guy's the track champion. So I'll never forget it when they let the race go and they didn't do anything to Larson. I look at everybody in the skybox. I'm like, what was that? I lost all my money. And C and I were sitting in the stands the next day, and I said, dude, I hope he didn't take it real personal. I said, I had Langley on the hood of his car. He said, yeah, I know it. Thanks a lot. So, it was kind of a contentious situation, but it was fun. I mean, CE had the win. Larson's
Yeah,
proved
dude.
what he is. I mean, the kid's a phenomenal driver. Y'all seen that, and so I've had some experiences there, and then went down to Charlotte one year, and we went to a Christmas party at Hendricks, and I was there with Kyle and his sister and his sister's friend and his mom and dad, and so I've had some pretty good experiences with him, and he's a great kid, and I mean I think he's gonna
He is a great
do a
kid.
heck of a job racing. I mean, he just really was a dirt track guy, and he'd never been in an asphalt car until he got to Langley, and he just nailed it.
Yeah, he's just very natural. We had his nationwide crew chief on from last year, and he was telling us you don't have to tell him how to drive the car compared to some other drivers,
Right.
but he can't tell you what's wrong with the car either.
Yeah.
He just just naturally just has the ability.
There's so many good drivers, and then like Gray Golden, Gray Golden really got his mark of fame when he won the Legends Nationals at Langley Speedway in 2010, and he was in a Young Lions division, and I don't know if y'all remember, but at the end of the race, he passed a couple people, and he could be pretty aggressive if he needed to, and he did the right thing, and he ran a good, strong race, and he won, but somebody took him out right at the start-finish line, and his car tumbled end over end and went into the catch fence and caught on fire. And Dwayne Golden, his dad, was pretty upset. So, and he's a big guy, but I wrapped my arms around him, Scott, and I pulled Dwayne down, and I said, look, don't ruin it for Gray. This is big. I said, this is a big win. I said, look, Dwayne.
Hold on just a second, Noah.
And I said, we're going to take the car and bring it down here on the hook and set it in victory lane. So we did that, but it's the very film of that win that helped Gray Golden get his Krispy Kreme sponsorship. And, he's now in a Godovic car.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about it. They had a really good run at Greenville Pickens. I think they started 12th and finished second.
Yeah, they're
So
good.
Yeah, and then
I'm
we got
kind
the
of excited.
Godovic going to make his Xfinity debut next week.
Xfinity,
So.
and then Gray will be in that car, at Langley Speedway
Yeah.
at the K&N race. So it's been Drive for Diversity, and all these young drivers and the talented drivers we've been exposed to are really cool. So I'll urge anybody, if we can host Drive Diversity again at Langley Speedway, come out. The public can come out and meet the drivers and hang around too and watch them. So it's a lot of fun for everybody.
Yeah, it's certainly a great event.
All right, we have Noah Gregson on the line. How you doing, Noah?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So give us a little background on Noah Gregson and where he come from.
Yeah, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and
That's it?
years old.
So you raced out at the Bull Ring, right?
Yes, sir. I race super late models at the Bull Ring.
Now, is this your first year doing the K&N West?
It's kind of hard to hear you. You get closer to the microphone.
Is this your first year doing the K&N West series?
Yes, sir. It's my first year. Kern County Raceway was my first race in my debut.
Now, you had a great race at Kern County. You finished third in your first race, and that had to be an amazing experience to be able to have that good a finish in your first race there.
Yeah, I can't thank everyone from Jefferson Pit Racing enough for just working so hard all weekend. We just wanted to get speed time, and we're just taking it one race at a time. So we're just looking for speed time and completing every lap, and we're just hoping for maybe a top 10 finish. But we came out in third, and I was just ecstatic at the time.
Now, what kind of series did you get started in?
I've been racing legend cars for the last 2 years. I started in Bandoleros in 2012 at the Bull Ring. I won track championships and then moved up to the legend car ranks and did 4 super late model races last year at the Bull Ring. And now we started out this season with 2 races, 2 super late model races, and then the K&N Pro Series race at Kern County Raceway.
So what made you get started into racing? Did your dad race or somebody in the family race, or did you just wake up one day and say, I want to go racing?
Yeah, no one in my family ever raced. I'm a first-generation racer. And, I just always liked riding my bike and skateboarding and always being fast. I got a dirt bike when I was around 10 years old, and I just always loved, going fast and being have something, you might want to start real racing out. And so we got into the Bandolero and pretty much just stuck from there.
Now, tell us a little bit about Jefferson Pitts Racing. I know you race for them. That's a new team that I haven't heard from on the West Coast. Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, Jefferson and Jerry Pitts, the two former crew chiefs from Gene Price Motorsports. Gene Price wanted to get out of the K&N series, and he was doing all this stuff. So the two crew chiefs from there got us two drivers, me and Brayson Raz, and we signed full time this year for them. So it's a first year racing team, and we're looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, I would say you're looking pretty good. A third place in your first race. That's pretty good. That's real good. So you're going to run the whole series, the whole West Series this year?
Yes, sir. I'll be running full time in the K&M 1 Series, and I'll also be doing the super late model races.
Now, where do you see yourself? How old are you right now?
I'm 16 years old.
All right, you're 16 years old. So where do you see yourself in 5 or 6 years? What do you want to accomplish in the next 4 or 5 years, or whatever, to get where you want to be?
The ultimate goal any racer is to try and achieve all your accomplishments and make it to the top. With me being the Sprint Cup Series, but I'm just getting into racing compared to some of these other kids who have been racing go-karts since they're 3, 4, 5 years old. So I'm new to this, but I've had a little bit of early success in my career, and I've been moving along rather quickly. But I'm just taking it one race at a time and just doing the best I can do and just trying to get a finish each time as I can.
So how long have you been racing? How old were you when you first started?
I was 13 years old, and I started in the Bandolero division at the Bull Ring, and I won a track championship there, and moved up to the Legend Car Series, and ran 2 years in that, and then this season made 2 super late model races, and one of them being the Winter Showdown at Spring County Raceway, 250 laps, $25,000 to win, and we finished 12th there. So overall, it's been pretty good first part of the season.
Do you have any thoughts of down the road coming to the North Carolina area? A lot of people say if you're going to be in this sport, eventually you're going to have to end up around the North Carolina area to get yourself known. Do you see yourself doing that?
Yeah, I've been back east for the last 2 summers running legend cars back there at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Summer Shootout Series. Ran 5 races back there over the previous summer, and it's definitely different back there. Obviously, all the NASCAR teams are back there, all their shops and everything, and that's really the home of racing. And so, possibly going back there, like I said, we're just trying to take it one race at a time and not get too ahead of ourselves too fast.
Did you plan on running your late model or a K&N car on the East anywhere?
Yeah, we're looking into running the Snowball Derby at the end of the year, and maybe possibly, we don't have anything in the works right now, but it'd be nice to run a couple of those East races back there, maybe at Loudon or somewhere back there to gain more experience.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, if you're gonna come out here and run the East Series, I got the man who owns Langley Speedway sitting right here with me. You need to come to Langley Speedway.
Oh, I'd love to. That'd be an awesome opportunity.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to ask you a question. You're racing at the Bull Ring in Las Vegas. Do you guys like Jay Beasley? Y'all send him to the East Coast because nobody likes him, or do y'all really like him out there?
Yeah, Jay Beasley's a really great competitor. Over the last year, I'd say I've gotten to know him a little bit, and has a great opportunity back there running for Rev Racing, and it kind of helps the guys out on the West Coast, and being from Las Vegas, it helps get a name on the board. Also, with Dylan Klosniski running nationwide series last year, it helps get Las Vegas back on the map.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think Jay's doing a real good job out here representing the West Coast, and I just want to ask you that kind of as a joke, you know. I mean, you've probably raced against him in those super late models, but he's doing a good job out here, and you know, he came out here in the combine and got that ride with Rev Racing, and he's been doing pretty good out here.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. He's been working really hard. He has a lot of success at boring and super late models, so I'm really happy for him.
All right, well, Noah, we appreciate you giving us a little time tonight and talking with us. I know we kind of run over a little bit earlier to into your time, but we appreciate you doing it, and hopefully we'll hear from you real soon.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Good luck.
Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That kid moved pretty quick.
3 years. 3 years.
I mean,
Third
to
place.
Cannon, I mean, and to run third. I mean, the first time in a big car. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty damn good.
It sounded like the team they bought out,
Gene Price.
Gene Price. I mean, that's a pretty seasoned group out there on the West Racing. So when he said that, I'm like, oh, okay, y'all are running Gene Price's equipment, so
Should be
he's probably got a good package, I'm sure.
still. I mean, that's pretty crazy to be 13 and then 16 and you're
Yeah.
Cannon racing. See, you need to talk to your dad.
Finished third. Yeah.
I don't think Testerman Plumbing's.
I guess I gotta give up and go karts. I don't know.
It's hard to do everything.
Right.
Now we're gonna have Brendan. He's gonna call in here in a few minutes. I know you want to be here when